On April 18, 1947, a Slovakian priest wrapped up in delusions of nationalistic fervor was hung for his crimes against humanity. This man, Josef Tiso, had given up the Jewish people of his country Slovakia to the Third Reich, and headed a fascist regime in the name of securing his nation's prosperity. In studying his life, I believe we can learn an important cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ultranationalism. The information I plan to provide during this presentation comes from James Mace Ward, a Cornell University historian whose work includes the writing of the first English-language biography on Tiso, and Ivan Kamenik, a Slovakian historian who wrote Josef Tiso, The Tragedy of a Politician, Priest, and Man, in addition to various other researchers and archivists' work to collect Tiso's writings and records of his actions. Throughout his life, Tiso was a man devoted to his country and willing to do whatever was necessary to ensure its creation and growth, a devotion that led him to evil acts. During this presentation, I plan to cover Tiso's early life living in the Austro-Hungarian Empire and studying to be a priest, his work as a journalist, spokesman, and politician in the Slovak People's Party, his dealings with the Third Reich to establish an independent Slovakia from Czechoslovakia and Hungary, which led to his willingness to deport the Jews of his country to death camps, and finally, his trial for crimes against humanity, execution, and legacy. When discussing Josef Tiso, we must first discuss the time of his life when Slovakia was still a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. On October 13, 1887, Josef Tiso was born to a religious, ethnically Slovakian family in the Kingdom of Hungary, and spent the first few decades of his life living under the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He attended a grammar school where Hungarian nationalism was encouraged due to Slovakian grammar schools being shut down by the government. Eventually, he studied to earn his doctorate of theology from the Panmanium, a seminary school in Vienna for Hungarian theological students. This is where he first voiced his opinions on the Jewish people, saying that tavern owners of the Jewish faith were to blame for growing alcoholism in the area. During the First World War, after he graduated, Tiso served as a field curator in the 71st Regiment, which was comprised almost entirely of ethnic Slovakians, and it was where he first began to write. Most of his writing at the time were of a patriotic nature, serving to instill nationalism for the Slovakian people. After the end of the war, Tiso understood that the time had come for a rise in Slovakian nationalism as the empire fell apart. With the creation of the first Czechoslovak Republic, Josef began to become more politically active, arguing for the sovereignty of the Slovakian people over Slovakian land. He joined the Slovak People's Party in 1918 and soon began to rise through the party's ranks through his education, intelligence, and experience working with the common people. During the interwar period, Tiso displayed the persona of a moderate politician who could compromise with others easily, seemingly abandoning his earlier anti-Semitism. This placed him in a position of power towards the end of the period, allowing him to make the moves he would in the future. As the German-speaking Sudetenland was taken by the Third Reich, Tiso began to make overtures to Hitler and his cabinet to secure the independence of Slovakia from the Czech. He made a deal with the Third Reich by asking for their protection and assistance. As early as February 1939, these negotiations took place with German representatives, the payoff coming when the Germans occupied the remainder of Czechoslovakia and propped up the Slovak Republic, where Tiso was first named Prime Minister, then President. The trade-off for this was the dream of Josef's anti-Semitism. In February 1942, Slovakia became the first German ally to agree to the deportation of Jews to work in death camps. Over the course of the war, the Jewish population of Slovakia fell by more than 112,000 due to these actions, as recorded by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Yet for all his attempts to secure his new regime, Tiso's goals and plans collapsed with the fall of Germany and his arrest by Allied forces. Tiso's crimes would secure his condemnation, his legacy as a Nazi collaborator. On April 15, 1947, he was sentenced to death by the restored Czechoslovak National Court for his crimes against humanity, and on April 18, 1947, while wearing his clerical vestments, the man who had sold the Jewish population of his nation to the Nazis was hung. In secret, the Czech government buried his body to prevent Slovakian ultranationalists from turning his grave into a shrine, and thus ends the life of one of the most pragmatic collaborators, a man who was willing to sell his soul to secure his country's independence. In his life, Tiso served as a priest within the old Austro-Hungarian Empire and army, wondering when the Slovakian people would be recognized as independent. After the First World War, he took political matters into his own hands and began to rise through the political ranks in Czechoslovakia before signing deals with the Third Reich to secure Slovakia's establishment while signing away the lives of thousands of Jews. For his actions to achieve his ambitions, Tiso was marked and executed as a traitor and should be remembered as such. Throughout his life, he was a man devoted to his country and was willing to do whatever was necessary to ensure his creation and growth, a devotion that led him to evil acts. If left unchecked, one's ambitions can lead them down the same path of Tiso, one of pragmatic opportunism and collaboration with regimes such as the Third Reich to secure one's own goals. As stated earlier in the presentation, all information has been taken from the works of Ivan Kamenik and James Ward, along with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Kamenik's book, Josef Tiso, The Tragedy of a Politician, Priest, and Man, and Ward's book, Priest, Politician, Collaborator, Josef Tiso and the Making of Fascist Slovakia, provided the bulk of information, while statistical information came from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's website.